It's Friday here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Will the Steelers finally open up the offense just a little bit for Justin Fields? We'll talk about that, get you all our week 3 picks and keys to the game, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Joined today by Shelby Cassesse of Gen 11 WPXI. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. And of course, that's at PrizePicks. More on them later. And as I said before, we're joined by Shelby Cassesse herself. She is back on the show. We're happy to have her as always. Shelby, it's week 3 of the NFL season, and it just feels like things are kind of get back to normal in the football world.
All feels right with the world, right? We're back sort of in the thick of it. I'm noticing the leaves changing a little bit out there. It's the prime time of year. It is my favorite time of the year. September through December every year is the best. And I'm happy to be joining you to talk about some week 3 NFL action.
Absolutely. There's a lot of excitement going around. But one thing, Shelby, we've talked about this a lot, and we broke down this matchup a little bit yesterday with our crossover Thursday with David Drogemeyer of Locked On Chargers. If y'all haven't missed that episode, go back and check it out. But what I want to talk to you, Shelby, about is this Steelers offense again, because these are the two top defenses through 2 weeks of football right now. Chargers, least amount of points allowed. Steelers, second least amount of points allowed so far. And we know that those two defenses are going to dictate the pace of things. But where the Steelers need something to change is they need their offense to put some pressure on the Chargers defense to have to prove that they're the best. They need some production. They need to be able to move the ball a bit more and to finish drives with touchdowns. They've only had 1 touchdown in 2 games, and yet they're 2-0. Shelby, do you think that this is a week where you might see some progress from the Steelers offense, or do you think that they still bottle it up against a team when they're facing a team that has a defense that's playing as well as the Chargers are?
Well, now we're entering the 3rd week with Justin Fields, and I think it's been a little bit difficult to get him going just because of the situation being what it was. Only had a couple of days to prepare as the starter in week 1. Week 2, you're going out to Denver. They mentioned the altitude quite a bit in postgame, I thought. Defensively, those guys had mentioned how tough it was. And Mike Tomlin talked about that environment being actually a really big concern for him. And on top of that, you got to a point in that Denver game where I just feel like they kind of said, let's go into management mode. We're not going to be aggressive. We're not going to push it. We're not going to put anything risky out there to potentially make a backbreaking mistake. And I think they kind of put the lid on things. It was just a maintain the lead type of approach. So now you're in week 3. The excuses are kind of gone at this point in terms of letting Justin Fields do a bit more, designing more for him to roll out, get his legs moving a bit more frequently. So I think this will be an opportunity for Justin Fields to make this offense a little bit more of his own and not just trying to maintain the game plan the Steelers had in place for in the first week, Russell Wilson, and in the second week, just to kind of maintain that lead. So if there is an opportunity for the Steelers to take that next step, it's this week. Chris, you and I were both in the locker room this week. How many times did we hear the dam is close to breaking? I feel like that was said probably 10 times between all the interviews we've done. This offensive staff, the players, feel that they are close to a breakthrough. And I think I want to see signs of that in this coming week, because there really aren't a lot of reasons why there shouldn't be at this point.
Yeah, I'm right with you. They need to start putting some things together. Now, again, I still think that they keep this offense buttoned up a little bit. I feel like they're not going to come out here and sling the ball 50 times. But I do think, like, for example, we've seen Justin Fields take deep shots, and last week we saw him finally target the middle part of the field, but he still hasn't thrown a real deep middle pass, like a deep pass, like a deep post pattern. I think something like that is coming this week, because I think they're going to try to open up the playbook just a little bit more and attack different parts of this Chargers defense that they feel comfortable going after. Arthur Smith spoke a little bit on Thursday before Steelers practice about Justin Fields, but also about the changing trends in the NFL with horizontal passing versus vertical passing. Here's a few minutes with Arthur Smith when we got a chance to talk to him on Thursday.
Arthur, when you zoom out and look at Justin Fields' performance through 2 games, what's been most encouraging for you? And on the flip side, what are areas you'd like to see him continue to grow and develop?
Yeah, there's a lot of positives. We haven't had to hit the ball a ton, and that's again credit to the way that Mike sets the table and the way we're built right now, as we evolve in the season. And at the end of the day, it's ultimately about winning. And you start worrying about stats this early in the year, you see that with players and coaches. I mean, and that's the thing with fighting. It's incentivized, right? I mean, guys get jobs because maybe on bad teams that have 400-yard games. I guess what's freeing for me now is having been a head coach, I feel free. You get the big picture. Mike's awesome. The whole organization, it's about winning, period. And it's about improvement. And so that certainly helps, big picture-wise, we're building this thing out. So going back to, some of the original question you asked about Justin, things are valuable. He's playing very smart football, situationally, understanding the plan, understanding the attack, and what we're trying to accomplish. And what's been encouraging to me is his pocket presence. Like I said, he's been standing in there when the pocket's gotten dirty, when he brought heat. I thought he's made some big-time throws down the field. Again, some of those were called back, even some of the DPIs. I thought the deep ball accuracy was pretty damn good. Some other things we'll keep pushing, but I'm very encouraged. He's a young player in this league. I said it last week. He's barely older than some of these rookies that have been drafted that are playing now or were drafted. And you need those reps. And so I've been very encouraged. He's awesome to work with. So that's all been positive.
When you look at the league as a whole, I know you guys have stretched the ball down the field a little bit more last week, but as a whole, you guys in the league are going to a more horizontal passing game, looking for throws in the flat. Just what about that kind of trend is, maybe why is it trending that way? What about that makes it successful?
I mean, there's so many angles you can look at it. If you look at league-wide trends, a little bit, there's a couple things in my opinion. These are just my opinion. And that's why you love football, because there's so many ways you can discuss it. But I think what you're seeing is there's a trend right in the, whatever you want to call it, the 2010s, if that's accurate, whatever you want to call that era. There was some really good veteran quarterback play around the league. Everybody saw it here with Ben, some elite level quarterback play. You saw it with both Mannings, and there was. And those guys eventually retired. And so I think you saw a lot of veteran quarterbacks. I think what was trendy too, there was a lot of single high. That scheme was, now you're getting so much shell coverage where people are putting an umbrella over it, and kind of, if you got a great rush team, they're trying to get you to hold the ball if you get greedy, and you got a lot of young quarterbacks. And a lot of guys, and they got to play earlier. They're used to playing horizontal games. So some of it's dictated by the defenses. Like the defenses right back, you've got to transition with young quarterbacks in this league. And so there's a lot going on there. So that would be my best answer I can give you. But again, that's just my opinion.
So Shelby, right there, Arthur Smith, he gives credit to Justin Fields for what he's doing. He also, talks about how the game is changing in the NFL. And this is something that I talked about with David Drogemeyer about, like, how more teams are being conservative. They're taking the underneath stuff. They're running the football. Unless you have Patrick Mahomes, and even Patrick Mahomes is doing this a little bit, because teams are playing 2 deep safeties. And, despite what Mel Kiper thinks about needing to not allow that in the NFL, which one of the dumbest takes I've ever heard, like, this is part of what's happening right now. And so I also think that there needs to be a tempering of expectations on what it is Justin Fields is opening up. And he's not going to be opening up and slinging it 40 yards downfield, once a drive. But it is going to be about, I think, giving him a wider variety of tools to use in the concepts that are called, that make different things available in different parts of the field, so that he can get the chance to shine a little bit more than he has.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I remember even probably 3 years ago, sounds about appropriate, people were saying, if you don't have a Patrick Mahomes, if you don't have a Josh Allen, you're not going to win in this league. It's going to passing. If you don't have someone who can sling it, you're not going to win. And so, of course, everyone wants a Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes still, but there are other ways to win. And when you talk about tapering that expectation for the Steelers offense, not only is that what they're not going to allow Justin Fields to do, what they're not going to want him to do. And I think even when you have Russell Wilson in there, they're not going to want him to do. That's just not the kind of guy Arthur Smith is. That is not the offense he has run at any point in his career. He has always been a smash mouth, run first approach. And then maybe it opens some things up down the field from time and time, every once in a while. And that could be the dagger in the game, or that could be the unique play that it turns the tides in a game. But when you look across the league, and when you look specifically at what Arthur Smith does, what the Steelers have tended to do over time, over these last handful of years, it is always going to be a run first approach. It is always going to be a ground and pound. And then maybe some things open up in the back as a result. But yeah, I mean, how much discussion have we heard about two high safeties this week? I feel like I've never heard so much debate about the two high safety. But in a way, we talk about, is the lid going to come off the offense a little bit this week? I think we will see that. I'd like to see signs of that breakthrough everyone's talking about. But at the end of the day, it's not oftentimes what people are going to expect what they see in this offense, because you're not going to see someone sling it for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's just not the direction Arthur Smith takes his offenses in. And to be honest, it might not be what the game lends itself to, what the matchup lends itself to this Sunday. The Chargers bring in, statistically, through a very small sample size, the best defense in the league, the stingiest defense in the league. So we can, get into that aspect of it later. But these two teams also kind of expect that ground and pound game on both sides this week. So I think you will kind of continue to see that conservative approach. But again, hopefully they design a bit more specifically for Justin Fields to get the ball downfield a little bit more frequently than what we're seeing. And of course, utilizing the middle of the field too.
And doing those two things, deep shots a little bit more, and using the middle part of the field, especially out play action, that kind of stuff opens up the run game more, which is what the Steelers want to do. Again, striking that balance is the key here. It's not just passing to pass, it's passing to set up something else, just like you're running to set up something else. That's what good offensive coordinators do. And one more thing here before we move on to the next segment, I thought it was very interesting. So if you haven't seen the Mel Kiper clip, just look it up on social media. You'll find it real quickly, of him kind of getting crushed by Dan Orlovsky, who was just like, that's absolutely ridiculous. The two high safety thing is is a staple of football. But I thought it was really interesting because Dan Orlovsky was like, this dates all the way back to the Tampa 2, and referencing Tony Dungy's defenses back with Tampa Bay Buccaneers and eventually the Indianapolis Colts. But Tony Dungy came out and said, and I'll just quote him directly from Twitter. He says, "Thanks, Dan, for including me in the legacy of Cover 2. But our Tampa version wasn't nearly the beginning of the story. Cover 2 was introduced to the NFL by Bud Carson and the Pittsburgh Steelers in 1973.
There you go.
51 years ago." He said, "I took the Tampa version right out of the Steeler playbook," which, by the way, is where Tony Dungy played when he came into the NFL. And also where he first
That's a tidbit some people might not know about.
Absolutely. It was the first thing I thought when I heard this. I'm like, this is the Steelers 70s defense. This is what they put together. But just a fun little tidbit if any of y'all Steelers fans out there. Yeah. Just
your next
think.
Trivia answer, your next trivia winner, your next party fact. There you go.
Right there. All right, Shelby, we're gonna come back. I want to get your week 3 picks and mine as well. We'll also update the standings in the Pick'em League for the Locked On Steelers podcast. All here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Shelby Cassesse, stick with us. We're right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. You've heard us talk about FanDuel a lot because it is America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, the money lines heading to the weekend still slightly favoring the Steelers. 1.5 point favorites of the Steelers at home, while it's -120 is the money line for the Steelers, plus 102 for the Chargers. The over-under sitting still at 35.5 points there. Go make all your bets on all the games and all the sports on FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. And now through September 22nd, you got 2 days left, y'all, so you better get on this. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5, and you will get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any point in time. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook and take advantage of that YouTube TV NFL Sunday Ticket deal. And that's from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Shelby Cassesse of Channel 11 WPXI. Okay, Shelby, let's get into the picks a little bit here. Let's get into it. But before we do our picks, want to update the standings. So first of all, we always thank everyone who joins the Lock On Steelers Pick'em League. It's 329 people strong right now. So there's a lot of y'all competing out there. Yeah, it's a lot of people, Shelby. There's a lot of competition. But we have last week, it was a mixed field. There were like 30 people tied for first place. Now after 2 weeks, 2 people have risen to the top. There's Steel number 1 and I'm a not genius. There's some really creative names in
That's a great
here.
name.
Yeah, so they're both sitting at 25-7 and tied for first place. Shout out to you all for joining the group. There's quite a few people right behind him right now. I'm sitting there with 21 correct picks so far, tied 58th place. I ain't too mad at myself, but this week I'm making up ground, Shelby, and I'm going to be interested to see who you pick here too. Of course, we're going to start by skipping the Thursday night football game as this is the Friday episode, so we're not going to get into that. But let's kick things off with an AFC North team that's playing Sunday, 1 o'clock. That's the Cleveland Browns facing the Giants. Browns at home in Cleveland and our 6.5-point favorites here. I'm taking the Browns, Shelby. And they're also my survivor pick this league. I do a couple survivor pools because I feel like the Giants are that bad. I think Jenna would co-sign that because she's very non-optimistic about it. But is this a week where the Browns could be on upset alert, or do you think they got this in the bag?
No, the Giants stink. There's no other analysis to add to this matchup because the Giants just stink. They're that bad. The Browns are going to win this. They have it in hand. It's been a long time since I've seen an offense. People talk about an offense being hard to watch. People talk about that game in Denver offense being hard to watch. There is no harder offense to watch than the New York Giants.
Next up is the Colts hosting the Bears. Interesting young quarterback battle here. Anthony Richardson versus Caleb Williams. The Colts are 1.5-point favorites here. And I'm taking the Colts, but they have not impressed me that much yet. I thought they'd start off a little bit better than they have. Granted, the reason I'm taking them is because the Bears have not impressed me in the least. Exactly. And I'm sticking with Indianapolis. Do you agree here?
Yeah, I do agree, and you and I are on the same page with that. I think Indianapolis is more talented than 0-2. They have way more to offer than I think what their record says. They just haven't played like it. They've been inconsistent. They've had a hard time getting their offense going on a more consistent basis. I think it's as close as what the spread says, but I think Indy squeaks this one out. I think they begin to find some of that offensive consistency in this one.
I think so too. They have weapons. They're going to start using more of them at a more consistent rate. Let's move on to what's a very interesting 2-0 versus 2-0. The Houston Texans at the Minnesota Vikings. Right, because no one really pegged the Vikings to be starting off as hot as they have. Justin Jefferson also says he will play in this game for sure, quote unquote. So the Texans are 2.5-point favorites on the road in Minnesota. I'm sticking with the Texans here, but Shelby, should we be on upset alert?
Yeah. We should definitely be on upset alert. I'm also taking the Texans. Sam Darnold has kind of just come out of nowhere to, in a less than ideal situation, obviously, for the Vikings. He has come out of nowhere, proved to be what exactly you want and more from a good backup. A surprise 2-0 start for them. I am also picking the Texans. Their offense is just too stacked. They continue to impress week after week. They've been in some close contests, but again, they just have so much talent. Not to mention, I feel like what gets overshadowed by the offense is this Texans pass rush. I think they're going to give Sam Darnold fits, and I think it is going to be close. I think we are on upset alert, but I'm ultimately going to take the Texans.
I'm right with you there. The Vikings have the number 3 defense in the league right now. Patrick Jones, a Pitt grad man himself there, has 4 sacks so far. I think it's going to be a very interesting game between those two. Now, here's another game that's going to be very interesting. The Eagles are 2.5-point dogs on the road in New Orleans against the Saints. Nobody saw the Saints coming the way the Saints have been marching in, and they are 2.5-point favorites at home. If you had asked me preseason, I would have said, "Oh, Eagles taking that all the way." But the way these two teams have played of late, the Saints offense looks unstoppable, while the Eagles look meh. They just lost at home to the Falcons. I'm taking the Saints.
I am also taking the Saints. No doubt the surprise through 2 weeks, without a doubt. 47 points in week 1, 44 points in week 2. One of those was against the Carolina Panthers. Again, they're right up there with the New York Giants for me. But this is so impressive from the Saints. and a Philadelphia team that has just struggled to come out in big moments. They've struggled to.
Yep.
There's that echelon of team where you're extremely talented, you win games, but you just can't quite seem to win the games you're supposed to almost. And that's what I feel like the Eagles have tended to be like for the last couple of seasons. They are extremely talented. They steamroll teams a lot of the time, but then they just can't win these games they're supposed to. I think what we could have here, Chris, is a little bit of a shootout. I think you're going to see a lot of scoring in this game. But again, this Saints team has really impressed me. And then you have a Philadelphia defense that struggled with the Atlanta Falcons this week. So I'm going to stick with the Saints, the surprise team of the start to the NFL season.
I agree. They have been a surprise, and they've been fun to watch. Like when I go back and look what they do, I'm like, man, it's really impressive. Let's move on to a different game here. Broncos at Buccaneers, one of the bigger spreads of the weekend. 6.5-point favorites of the Buccaneers. They've come out red hot.
Yes.
The Broncos have not. I'm taking the Buccaneers, and give me those points too. I will pick the Buccaneers to cover that easily.
Same here. I think bottom line is the Bucs have it together. The Broncos don't. We saw it last week. Their offense has not clicked at all. They still have a lot to learn on that side of the ball. Defense didn't impress me either. And the Buccaneers, they just have it together right now.
The Packers are at the Titans, and this was a bit of a surprise to me, but the Titans are 2.5-point favorites at home. I know that Jordan Love's dealing with some injuries, Shelby, but give me the Packers. I'm sorry. They should be the favorites. I feel like they're the better team. Malik Willis filled in. I felt well enough for them last week. That's why I'm taking Green Bay. What say you?
I'm taking Green Bay as well. I think there's been a little bit of uncertainty for Jordan Love. He's been back at practice this week, pretty limited. I think they're going to make him a game time decision, but whether or not he plays, I'm still taking the Packers. Will Levis just isn't looking like much of an answer in Tennessee. They can't really get their offense clicking. If Jordan Love plays, all the more, but I think regardless, the Packers are just a better team all around.
Carolina Panthers at Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders 5.5-point favorites at home. I made it a general rule. You're a smart person if your survivor pick every week is just whoever plays the Panthers because they are that bad of a team, and they've benched Bryce Young. Yeah, so I'm taking the Raiders easily, and I assume you are too.
100%.
No, nothing else needed there. They're just that bad.
Again, like Panthers, Giants. They're the yin and the yang. They're two halves of one whole.
It'll be appointment television where I when you said that earlier, I went and looked it up. They play each other at 9:30 in the morning, Sunday, November 10th. Appointment television, ladies and gentlemen.
Get out. Is it international?
I can't. There's no note on the stadium here on the thing that I'm looking at. I'm trying to see if it is. If it is, it's going to be so funny that it's one of the international games. Like you're like, imagine that being like the London game. They're like, get this stuff out of here. This is why we like soccer. Anyway,
let's grow the game in London and send the Giants and the Panthers over there.
That's fun. Okay, let's move forward. We got a lot of other games here. Dolphins at Seahawks. Seahawks 4.5-point favorites at home. I'm sorry with how the Dolphins look. I'm taking Seattle.
Yeah, I agree with you. Seattle's looked impressive to start. Dolphins are obviously going to be without Tua, so I'm going to take Seattle with the way they've been able to put an offense together so far.
This is a tricky game here. Lions 3-point favorites on the road at the Cardinals, who just absolutely smoked the Los Angeles Rams last week. Yep. I'm taking the Lions, but Shelby, I feel nervous in doing so.
I agree. This is, I don't know, do you want to call it an upset alert here? But because I think the Cardinals have a really good shot. I was reading an article about them recently where the way it was put, it was essentially like the Cardinals are doing something that they're not used to, which is winning. And that's really what has happened these first couple of weeks. They've looked so good on offense. Kyler Murray looks like he's finally getting it together a little bit after several years. But I am also picking Detroit. This group, the culture of this group is one that is built to respond to adversity. They lost last week. I just think overall, though, they're more put together, more cohesive than what Arizona has. So I'm taking them. I don't feel great about it. I think you could see it go the other way.
Yeah, I think I feel you there too. Let's move on to what could be the game of the week. It's the Baltimore Ravens at the Dallas Cowboys. The Ravens go into this game 0-2, while the Cowboys are 1-1. But the Ravens, according to FanDuel, are 1.5-point favorites, making it very close to a pick'em there. This is a very interesting situation because the Cowboys, they came out this season and after they won in Cleveland, they had a 16 home game win streak. completely destroyed by the Saints. They also have, at least in recent history, bounced back from utter destroying defeats really well. But I look at the Ravens, and the Ravens got to be in a position where, like, hey, we can't afford to go 0-3. If the Steelers win this week, we're 3 games behind them. If the Browns win this week and they're playing the Giants, we're 2 games behind them. If the Bengals win this week and they're playing the Commanders, then we're a game behind them too. We got to make a move. I'm taking the Ravens here. Out of simple desperation, I think they'll do it. And I wonder if something's wrong with Dallas right now.
You and I are both on the same page here. I am taking the Ravens as well. At the end of the day, these are 2 very angry teams that have their own separate reasons to be angry, both trying to rebound from just awful losses. I just think at the end of the day, the Ravens have more of an offensive identity. You're right. There's a lot wrong with the Cowboys offense. Their running game just hasn't been going at all. CeeDee Lamb obviously missed a massive portion of the offseason. That connection with Dak Prescott just seems to be slow to get going. And so I think just from the sense that I think the Ravens are a more complete team, they have a better offensive identity. I think they're going to take this one. I think Cowboys at home, like you said, right?
Yes. Cowboys are home.
Oh, I think they might embarrass the Cowboys at home, but I think I'm excited to watch this one probably, aside from the Steelers, this entire slate. Ravens-Cowboys is going to be where it's at this week.
The Niners are 6.5-point road favorites over the Rams in Los Angeles. Give me the Niners and the points. I know they lost last week to the Vikings, but I think the Rams are just in a bad situation. The Niners maybe without Christian McCaffrey, but they're still going to find a way to win this one. Man,
I wish we could see this matchup when both teams are healthy, because you're not going to have Puka Nacua. I don't think Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel's hurt, Christian McCaffrey, obviously. There is so much star power in just those 4 names that probably won't be playing, which really bums me out as a football fan. But anyways, I think the Rams are just, those pieces are just their entire offense, essentially. And so to not have Cooper Kupp, to not have Puka Nacua, that's just a bigger loss. 49ers are a more complete team, even with those injuries. I think I'm going to take them as well.
All right, now we move to some of the night games. Chiefs at Falcons. This is a very close line right now. It is Chiefs are just 3-point favorites at home. Like just a field goal given to the Chiefs here. And I wonder how much of this is because of the Falcons win last week. If that has some people on alert. This is in Atlanta, so that factors in too. I'm taking the Chiefs here, Shelby, but looking at that line right there, I'm a little nervous.
I see if that's the line. I might go throw all my money on the Chiefs then. I still think it's a situation where Patrick Mahomes will just pick the Falcons apart a little bit. They're too talented, and we saw, as great as the Falcons win was last week, the Chiefs are just too good.
I agree. Last 2 games here, both Monday night contests. Jaguars at the Bills. Bills 4.5-point favorites. I'm taking Buffalo. The Jaguars have not impressed me yet, and I think the Bills with Josh Allen are still able to roll here.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. I'm disappointed with this Jaguars 0-2 start. I thought they were better than that. I think they are better than that, but not good enough to beat Buffalo. I think that offense is going to overwhelm them.
Then there's 2 Monday night games again. So the second one is Commanders at Bengals. I'm taking the Bengals here, but Shelby, the line is 7.5 points for the Bengals. Wow. I will take the Commanders to cover. I think this will be a 1-score game, but I think the Bengals win at home.
2 LSU quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels succeeded Joe Burrow over at LSU. So that's going to be an interesting little matchup there. But again, you talk about, the Ravens and Cowboys being angry. The Bengals are also angry. I think Washington might give a shaky Bengals defense some fits. I think they're going to test them. I think it's going to be closer than what the spread is saying, but I think the Bengals do get it together in this game. I think Joe Burrow wills his team to a win here.
Absolutely. We give you our Steelers predictions and our keys to the game right after this here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Shelby Cassesse, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling against thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just to win, all you have to do is pick more or less on this player stat projections of anywhere from 2 to 6 players, and you can start watching your winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the fun new daily fantasy game that everyone needs to start playing right now. Special deals right now allow you to just get a simple win by saying, hey, Caleb Williams, will he get more than one passing yard every week in September? Then if you just say yes, you can add that to your winnings all month long on PrizePicks. Boost your PrizePicks all month long with an automatic win there. And also on PrizePicks right now, you can win up to 100 times your money with as little as making 4 correct picks. Get on PrizePicks today. It's NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, college sports, and so much more. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up to play daily fantasy sports. When you go to prizepicks.com, go to prizepicks.com/lockedon NFL, and you can use code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $50 instantly when you play just $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to receive a $50 bonus for just playing $5 at PrizePicks. PrizePicks, run your game. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter with Shelby Cassesse of Channel 11 WPXI. Shelby, let's get into our keys to the game here. If there is one big thing the Steelers have to do in your eyes this week to win, what do you focus on?
Well, it's kind of a twofold for me. And I think this is ultimately going to come down to battle of the pass rush, right? You obviously have the TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith combo. But on the flip side with the Chargers, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, that is obviously a lethal combination as well. So which of those groups can wreak the most havoc? Which of those groups can provide the game-changing play, the strip sack, the big sack on a critical 3rd or 4th down? I think that's what it's going to boil down to. Which of those groups change the game? And on that note, can a young Steelers offensive line hold up against that pass rush? I think this is going to be the biggest challenge for those guys that we've seen so far this year. Pass protection has been good. I think one of the main talking points this week has been how good Justin Fields has been with maintaining his composure in the pocket, not taking off too quickly, letting the play develop. And so can they continue to put a solid protection in front of him? Can they outlast in a physical battle in the trenches? And can they maintain a solid front against what could be a very lethal Chargers pass rush? I think it's just going to boil down to who gets to the quarterback more, who makes him more uncomfortable. The other thing to consider is that Justin Herbert's, been injured. He hurt his ankle last week. He didn't practice yesterday. I think he was limited today, so he might be on shaky ground. So if the Steelers pass rush can get to Justin Herbert, if the Steelers offensive line can prevent the Chargers pass rush from getting to Justin Fields, then I think the Steelers will have a key to victory.
I think that's a great observation there. It's going to be really interesting because both of these teams have invested first-round picks and offensive tackles in very recent drafts. Rashawn Slater playing very well for the Chargers right now. Joe Alt hasn't a lot of pressure yet, and he's going to go up against TJ Watt. That's huge. The Steelers, Troy Fautano getting his second start. He's going to be out there. Dan Moore Jr. at left tackle still. Them against Bosa and Mack. That's going to be huge. That's going to be a factor here. I think my key here is what's going to happen in between the tackles, and can the Steelers stuff the run of the Chargers? The Chargers have come out the gate, and they're not exactly throwing the ball all over the lot. They're very much so taking it easy. They're running the ball, playing the same kind of ball the Steelers are doing, and we talked about that a lot on Thursday's crossover Thursday episode. But I think that's part of what Jim Harbaugh wanted to do. He wanted to settle down the offense, get everything back in order, lean on this defense. And it's kind of crazy if you look at the way that the Chargers have played their game. They're leaning on J.K. Dobbins. They're leaning on Gus Edwards, 2 Ravens running backs who the Steelers should be very familiar with. And to me, my key is you got to stuff them. And it's not just going to be about the defensive line. It's going to be about the linebackers. Can they get in the right fits? Can they get to the right spots? And it's funny that I bring that up because there's a certain individual who has a lot of experience with the Ravens who just signed and is the Steelers' top linebacker. That's one Patrick Queen. I caught up with him in the locker room Thursday. Here's my one-on-one conversation with Patrick Queen where we talk about that run game at the end of it. Patrick, you guys are the number 2 defense in the NFL right now. This week you're going against the number 1 defense in the NFL. What has allowed you guys to get off to this great start so far?
Just trusting each other, great communication, effort, just all of us playing together. It's something that we've been working on since OTAs, trying to get everybody on the same page and stuff. So we're just going out there and playing good ball right now.
These Chargers run the ball well right now. Just J.K. Dobbins, a guy that you're familiar with, and Gus Edwards, another guy you're familiar with, playing really well. What do you guys have to do to counter what they like to do on the ground?
We got to come out and be physical. We got to play a good game, sound game, dominant game. Like you said, J.K. and Gus doing everything they can right now, and they look great doing it. So I think with the whole Giro scheme and everything, that they got a good thing going, and that's why we just got to be on our best game.
You guys haven't given up many explosive plays early on in the season. What has it been like adapting to the communication with guys like Minka, guys like Peyton, and guys like Landon in putting this defense together?
Yeah, it's just it's everything I expected. Honestly, I wouldn't expect anything different. It's just me going out there doing a job, trying to be there for my teammates, just giving them the best outlet, just to go out there and play fast, play dominant football. That's my job, to come here, keep everything calm, keep everything settled, just go out there and help them.
So lots of different things there. Patrick Queen, though, knows the challenge. They got to stuff this run. It's going to be about fitting the right gaps, attacking the right holes, being aggressive. I think this is a week. They have basically held back Patrick Queen a lot from blitzing in these first 2 weeks. I think this is a week where they turn it up. They say, go get those guys, go get the quarterback. Let's mix things up. And that's how they try to disrupt this Chargers offense here, Shelby. But with that being said, Shelby, it's time to make our picks. Give us your turning point of the game, what you think is the part of the game and the thing that flips it in the favor of the team you're picking, and then your final score prediction on who wins, Steelers hosting the Chargers.
I'm going to go with the Steelers here. Again, ground and pound. When I look at my keys to the game, and I'm talking about pass rush, few better ones than what the Pittsburgh Steelers have. So my turning point, I believe, is going to be a strip sack of Justin Herbert. It's going to be a tight game the whole way, but I think the Steelers defense gets in there late in the game, late in the third quarter, maybe fourth quarter. And that's going to be the big turning point for the Steelers. Like I said, ground and pound. It's going to be close. I'm going to go 17-13 Steelers.
Oh, very, very much the Steeler type of ball there. The rock fight that they want to get into. That's a very interesting point. I do think it comes down to the pass rush winning this game, and that being a big factor that turns this game in the favor of the winners. But Shelby, I don't think it'll be the Steelers. I think it's going to be a very similar score, 17-13, 17-16. I think that the way things are lining up, and particularly because of this reason, less even so about the quarterbacks. I often talk about how I think it's which defensive front is that much better than the other team's offensive front. Which team has that advantage more so over the other, and that plays a factor. I think the Steelers' defensive front is better than the Chargers' defensive front, but I think the difference. Yes, and I think the difference between the Steelers' defensive front and the Chargers' offensive front is smaller than that of the Chargers' defensive front and the Steelers' offensive line, particularly because I think that Bosa and Mack will have more success against Fautanu and more than Watt and Highsmith will do against Alt and Slater. And that's not to say that either will be completely, destroyed by these offensive tackles. I'm just simply saying I think that when I look at how those guys have played to start the season, they've played very well. I think Troy Fautanu had a really good start last week. I think Dan Moore's had a really good start the first 2 weeks. I don't think that those guys are at where the Chargers offensive tackles are. And I think it is something where that gives Justin Herbert a little bit more time on the plays they want to get done. And I think that there's going to be a drive late in the game where one of the tackles gives up a pressure, it messes with Justin Fields, and it leads to a mistake there, or they get a sack on him, and that's a crushing play there. I think this goes down to the wire. I don't think this is a game where the Steelers really feel like they're completely outplayed. I think it's a very close game. These teams are very similar, but I'm going to go 20-18 Chargers. I think it's a very close game. It comes down to the final drive. The Steelers trying to get in field goal position for the Boz, and something going awry here. But that being said, I'm right with you. This is going to be a close rock fight. It's gonna be nasty. And hey, if I'm wrong, y'all, I'm sure y'all will let me know in the comment section on Monday when I'm back here. But Shelby, thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, thank you for having me. You can follow me on Instagram on X at Shelby Cassesse. You can find me on Channel 11, WPXI, and lots of Steelers content, lots of high school football content coming your way over these next handful of months. So join Jenna Harner and I over there.
Absolutely. She's Shelby Cassesse. Thank you, Shelby, for joining us. And thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll be back Sunday night with my initial recap of the game. And then, of course, our full episode going into Monday after Steelers Chargers. Who knows? If I'm wrong, maybe we'll figure out a punishment that you guys give me for picking against the Steelers.
Oh, my gosh.
I don't mean to. I'm not giving you guys too much power, but if someone comes with something funny, that might be cool. But anyways, we'll see you then after the game Sunday night here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.